hearing will come to order. Committee meets today to consider the nominations of Ambassador Kenneth Braithwaite and to be Secretary of Navy, General Charles Brown, U.S. Air Force, to be Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Dr. James Anderson, to be Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. And we thank you for all being here. We appreciate all the contributions that you have made in the past. I say this to all three of you. You've all had brilliant careers, and appreciate the fact that you're coming back again. Some of these things are necessary, so I have to ask you the required questions, and I'd like to have an audible yes or no on each question, if you would do that, please. Have you adhered to the applicable laws and regulations governing the conflicts of interest?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established for requested communications, including questions for the record in hearings?
Yes, sir.
And I heard one.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, okay. Will you cooperate in providing witnesses in briefs in response to congressional requests?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Will those witnesses be protected from reprisal for the testimony or briefings?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify upon request of this committee?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And do you agree to provide documents, including copies of electronic forms of communication, in a timely manner when requested by a duly constituted committee, or consult with the committee regarding the basis of any good faith delay or denial in providing such documents?
Yes, sir.
And have you assumed any duties or undertaken any actions which would appear to be presume the outcome of confirmation of the process?
No, sir.
No, sir.
I have to tell you that right now you're taking these positions in the most, I believe, the most threatened times of our lives, and so far this committee has done our best to ensure that DOD has the authorities and the resources it needs to implement the National Defense Strategy. And further, the committee has been working for more than a year on the privatized housing crisis that has directly impacted the family morale and all that. You know, it's kind of interesting on that issue. I originally saw that came to surface from Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. And I was assuming this is a problem just in one Air Force base. Then later I found out, no, it's all of Oklahoma. Then it's all of it's all of our bases. So that's something that is we've done a good job. I really believe we have in pursuing that. And I know that all three of you will be somewhat related to the problems that are out there, and I'm sure that you'll go out of your way to try to keep the progress that we've made so far successful. As senior leaders of the Department of Defense today and in our positions for which we have been nominated, you have been would continue to play key roles both in winning great power competition and in taking the care of our people. So I look forward to one thing I'd like to say, and you'll get this from other members too. We're real believers in this. This is the National Defense Strategy. It's been good. We've adhered to it. And before I turn it over to Senator Reed, this is unusual in one way, in that you all have families I know would like to be here, and they can't be here. I understand they will be watching, though, so you can still introduce them. All right, Senator Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to welcome the members and thank them for their service, and also welcome our nominees and their willingness to continue to serve the nation. And I also want to thank your families, who I know are watching today. They also serve, and I think, gentlemen, you would agree you would not be here without your family, so they owe a lot of credit. Ambassador Braithwaite, you have been the ambassador to the Kingdom of Norway since February 2018. You served more than 27 years in the Navy and Navy Reserve, attaining the rank of Rear Admiral. You have also had a successful business career in the healthcare and communications industries. General Brown, by my count, you are currently triple-hatted as Commander, Pacific Air Forces, as the Air Component Commander, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and as the Executive Director, Pacific Air Combat Operations Staff at Joint Base Pearl Harbor at Hickam. You are a command pilot with more than 29,000 flying hours, including 130 combat hours. And Dr. Anderson, you have served in a variety of senior positions in the Department of Defense, including as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities since August 2018. You began your career as a Marine Corps intelligence officer and have realized many accomplishments in education, academic administration in both the government and private sector. So, again, thank you. I want to note that this is an unusual nomination hearing because we are considering a military nominee with 2 civilian nominees. Normally, we would not do this, but these are unusual circumstances, and I appreciate everyone accommodating this unique hearing. Let me also take this opportunity to pay tribute to our service members and their families, as well as the civilians and contractors for their service during this crisis. We are saddened by the loss of life and the rising rates of COVID-19 infections throughout the military. The recent incident with the USS Theodore Roosevelt serves as a reminder of the perils that our service members endure daily, whether deployed to combat zones or conducting routine operations. It also should have been a wake-up call about the Navy's actions with respect to COVID-19. Ambassador Braithwaite, if confirmed as the Secretary of the Navy, you will face a number of critical issues. First, you must address the effects of the ongoing pandemic on the Department of the Navy. I want to hear about your vision for the future and what lessons have been learned from your predecessors' mishandling of the USS Roosevelt situation. The USS Roosevelt and USS Kidd also demonstrate how quickly deployments can be stressed. So I'm interested in hearing what this tells us about how the Navy and Marine Corps are dealing with strains of deployment and high-tempo operations. The next Secretary's efforts in improving the readiness of our forces will be crucial. While readiness is important, if confirmed, you must also confront other challenges, including the size of the Navy fleet. Congress is still waiting on the latest force structure assessment from the Chief of Naval Operations, which was supposed to be shared with the committee last year. We must also modernize our fleet and improve operational concepts to ensure success in the future. Ambassador Braithwaite, I look forward to your thoughts on these issues.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Anderson, you are nominated to be the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, having previously been confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities. During your tenure, you performed more senior duties after leadership positions became vacant. While you have valuable experience, I am concerned that the Policy Office is and will continue to be hamstrung by the numerous senior-level vacancies within the office. The Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy plays a key role in implementing the National Defense Strategy and realigning the Department's operational planning, budgetary priorities, and capabilities with that strategy. As the Department contends with the revisionist Russia and China's global ambitions, it still lacks strategic guidance on multiple challenges. This includes clear policy for contending with rogue powers like Iran and North Korea, a path forward in Afghanistan, a strategy for securing peace and preventing the reemergence of ISIS in Syria, as well as developing policies for expanded areas of competition, including space, cyber, and irregular warfare. Furthermore, the ongoing novel coronavirus pandemic has starkly highlighted the need for the Department to engage in long-term planning for crisis response and the consequences of failing to do so. Mr. Anderson, I welcome your thoughts on these issues and how the Department can address these challenges. General Brown, you have been nominated to be Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Having most recently served as the Commander of Pacific Air Forces, you are very familiar with the challenges facing the Air Force today in the Pacific and how the Air Force should be implementing the National Defense Strategy. General Brown, if confirmed, you will also face challenges to improve readiness while modernizing and expanding force structure. In order to achieve the stated goal of 386 squadrons, the Air Force will need to increase and sustain modernization efforts over a number of years. On top of that, the Air Force must simultaneously recapitalize most of the bomber fleet and all of the land-based missile fleet. These are daunting challenges. In the very near term, General Brown, you will be tasked with recruiting and retaining a quality force. That is no small task as the Air Force and other services contend with the novel coronavirus pandemic and maintaining operational readiness. You will also need to ensure the Air Force has the necessary structure to respond to future crises and contingencies. I again thank the nominees and my colleagues for appearing at the committee's second hearing this week under these unusual circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much again for your leadership in many different ways.
Thank you, Senator Reid. Gentlemen, we'll now begin with opening statements. Try to keep your statements brief, around 5 minutes, and you'll have plenty of time with the well-attended group that you have right now in responding to other questions. So I'm going to start off with a very short question for each one of you, and we're going to try to get it within that 5 minutes, and we'll continue on. Thank you very much. Starting with Ambassador Braithwaite, one of the things we always hear about and talk about is what size of a Navy, what are we going to have? What do we really need? When we look at the Navy's fiscal year 2021 budget, it looks like it would support a fleet of about 300 ships, but that would be clearly, in most minds, inadequate. Just real briefly, okay, that's fine. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Let's start with the opening statements. So go ahead, and you're recognized for your open statement.
Thank you.
I was getting in too big a hurry, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Reed and distinguished members of the committee. Today is obviously a very big day for me, perhaps the most important of my professional life. But there have been 3 other big days in my life that I would like to share with you this morning to help you learn and inform you of who I am. July 8th, 1980, a typical hot, humid day aboard the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. I stood with over 1,000 of my classmates to take the sacred oath of office that began, like many of you, a career of service to our nation. For over 40 years, first in the uniform of the United States Navy, which took me around the world and into combat, later as a councilman in a small town in Pennsylvania, as a Senate staffer to the late Arlen Specter, and most recently as a U.S. ambassador, I have dedicated my life to the motto of our Navy: honor, courage, commitment. Those are not merely words to me or a slogan. No, those are the guide stars by which I have lived my life. June 6th, 1994, 14 years later, the 50th anniversary of the landings at D-Day, I stood on the windswept beach at Normandy with my aging father. He had been a young 18-year-old private in the first wave, actually the very third landing craft to touch the sand that morning in 1944. My father, like most of his generation, didn't talk much about that day, but as we stood there, he recounted how he had come ashore off the Higgins boat that dawn, watching his friends drop to his left and right. I asked him, among all the chaos and death that morning, how he was able to go on. He simply replied, "Son, it was my duty." Weeks later, he would be himself severely wounded, shot in the head in his service to our nation. His self-abnegation only served to reinforce in my heart, my head, and my soul honor, courage, and commitment. Finally, last summer, on the 75th anniversary of the same landing at D-Day, I once again was able to stand on that sacred beach at Normandy, but this time without my father, who passed away in 2006. Instead, this time, serving as the link to my 12-year-old son, Harrison, who had never met his grandfather. Only a few of those who were there that morning with my dad were left. But Harrison and I endeavored to shake each of their hands, recalling their sacrifices so we could live in freedom. The same who, like my dad, went before me, guided by honor, courage, and commitment. 3 simple but powerfully important words that have always guided all my actions. I am humbled to appear before you today to be considered as the 77th Secretary of the United States Navy, to uphold the sacred honor of those who have gone before me, whether Petty Officer Dory Miller at Pearl Harbor or Corporal Jason Dunham in Iraq. I thank the President for his trust and confidence in me. As a child of the Midwest, I was taught to be frank, diplomatic, of course, as is required of an admiral and an ambassador, but direct. It saddens me to say that the Department of the Navy is in rough waters, due to many factors, but primarily the failure of leadership. Whether Glenn Marine Defense the ship collisions in 2017, judicial missteps, or the crisis recently aboard USS Roosevelt, they are all indicative of a breakdown in the trust of those leading the service. Sadly, I have witnessed this type of crisis before. In 1989, I was aboard the aircraft carrier USS America, sailing alongside the battleship Iowa when an explosion killed 47 sailors. That was followed shortly thereafter by the scandal at Tailhook. These were some very dark days for the Navy. However, they taught me two things. One, the department is resilient, and two, it all starts with culture. I have learned this repeatedly in my career. Successful organizations have a strong culture, which always starts with leadership. And as I witnessed following the aforementioned events of the early 1990s, a proud heritage of service and pride, which the department emphasized then for inspiration and affirmation, and if confirmed, will again. While I recognize the challenges for all they are, I am ready. I have learned across myriad roles through military service, as an executive in the private sector, a congressional staffer, and now as a diplomat. I have been preparing my entire life for this moment, always guided by honor, courage, and commitment. I have many people to thank, like my mentors Admiral Tom Lynch and Admiral Steve Chadwick. But I wouldn't be here if not for my mother Sylvia, who is 87 and watching me this morning, who taught me that to work hard, you can accomplish anything in America. Finally, and most especially, the continued love and support of my beautiful and dear wife, Melissa, and my wonderful children, Grace and Harrison, who have sacrificed so much for me to serve, but also they have sacrificed for our nation. God blessed me by bringing each of them into my life. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and members of the committee. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. It's a beautiful statement. General Brown, you're recognized.
Chairman Inhofe, Ranking Member Reed, distinguished members of this committee, I'm grateful and deeply humbled by the opportunity to be with you and my fellow nominees this morning. I'd like to express my appreciation to this committee for their relentless support and advocacy for our United States Air Force, its airmen, and families. I'd like to take a few moments to acknowledge my family who, due to the hearing protocols, could not be with us today but are watching online. First, my wife, Shireen, of nearly 31 years, who's not only been committed to our family, but to the families of airmen, specifically focused on quality education for military children. I'm extremely proud of our two sons, our oldest son, Sean, who lives in Tampa, our younger son, Ross, who lives here in Washington, D.C., who are both outstanding in their own right. Shireen, Sean, and Ross have been instrumental to my success, and there's no way I would be here today without their sacrifices, love, and support. I also like to acknowledge my number one fan and most vocal supporter, my mother, Kay, and the most influential officer in my career, and my commissioning officer, my father, Charles, a Vietnam veteran who retired from the United States Army after 30 years of service as a colonel. Finally, I appreciate the unwavering support of my sister, Stephanie, and the influence of my younger brother, Kevin, had on me and my family before his passing. I'd like to thank President Trump, Secretary Esper, and Secretary Barrett for their confidence and support in nominating me to be the next Air Force Chief of Staff. I cannot thank General Dave and Don Goldfein enough as they conclude 37 years of service to our nation. For Shireen and I, it's been an honor to serve with the Goldfeins, and we wish them the very best as they start their next chapter. Chairman and members of this committee, the 2018 National Defense Strategy provides the Department of Defense with clear, actionable, and attainable goals to compete, deter, and win. For the past 11 years, over 7 different assignments, I have served in leadership positions focused on the 5 challenges: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and violent extremists that are all outlined in the National Defense Strategy. If confirmed, I am committed to the Air Force achieving irreversible momentum towards implementation of the National Defense Strategy in an integrated and more lethal joint force. At the top of that list is to work with Secretary Barrett and General Raymond to take the appropriate steps to ensure the success of the United States Space Force. Concurrently, I'm committed to realizing the joint warfighting concept that is in development. If confirmed, I look forward to working with the Chairman, the Vice Chairman, and the Joint Chiefs to increase our joint interoperability. Of particular importance will be building the digital foundation to support Joint All-Domain Command and Control, or JADC2, enabling the joint force, our allies, and our partners to connect, communicate, and integrate our collective efforts across all domains. To compete and deter and win, we will need to generate combat power faster than our adversaries. If confirmed, I'm an advocate for early and constant collaboration between operators, acquisition professionals, and industry partners to unleash innovation and spiral development so that the warfighter has access to the most capable and state-of-the-art assets sooner than later. I expect there will be tough decisions regarding legacy programs and future modernization. If confirmed, I will continue carefully consider risk assessments, balancing the Air Force's support to current combatant command requirements while investing in capabilities that prepare us for future competition, conflicts, and challenges. Finally, I am, and I will remain committed to the well-being of our airmen and families. It is an imperative to provide our airmen and families the quality of service, the quality of life, and the environment where all can reach their full potential. It is truly an honor to be nominated to serve as the next Air Force Chief of Staff. If confirmed, I look forward to working with this committee and the Congress to organize, train, and equip our Air Force to ensure the security of our national interests. Once again, thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General Brown. We'll now hear from Dr. James Anderson. You're recognized.
Chairman Inhofe, Ranking Member Reed, distinguished members of the committee, it is an honor to be here today. I am thankful for the confidence that President Trump and Secretary Esper have placed in me as the nominee for Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. I would not be here today without the support of family, friends, and mentors who have helped me throughout my career. My parents, Barbara and Michael Anderson, instilled in me the value of hard work, honesty, and respect for others. My sister, Winifred, and her wonderful family continue to provide much love and support. My children, James and Olivia, inspire me every day. Watching them grow and mature is the best part of being a parent. Most of all, I wish to thank my wife, Emily Anderson, who is watching these proceedings from a quiet little hamlet we call home in Northern Virginia. She knows well the sacrifices Pentagon positions demand, to include the before dawn departures and the after dusk returns. Her love and support make everything worthwhile. My professional experience has helped me prepare me for this opportunity. Since my confirmation as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities in August 2018, I have worked to implement our national defense strategy. If confirmed as Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, I will continue these efforts in a new role. I am now in my second Pentagon tour, having served in the Office of the Secretary of Defense from 2001 to 2009, working mostly Middle East issues in international security affairs. My professional experience has taught me the value of asking hard questions and the importance of seeking practical solutions. I've taught national security topics at several civilian and military educational institutions, to include the George C. Marshall Center for European Security Studies in Germany. Living overseas and working at this jewel of an institution reinforced the importance of working with allies and partners. Earlier in my career, I served 3 years on active duty as a Marine Corps officer in the late 1980s, an experience that imprinted upon me the importance of teamwork and esprit de corps. The opportunity to work alongside dedicated professionals in the defense of our great country inspired me then, just as it does now. The current COVID-19 crisis has brought about many new challenges for the department. The policy team in the Pentagon, working with its partners in the building and across the interagency, has risen to the occasion and continues to provide the Secretary of Defense with timely, top-quality advice and support. I am privileged to be part of this team. The Department of Defense issued its National Defense Strategy in January 2018, and it remains our North Star. The document clearly outlines the priorities to ensure our nation's competitive advantage amid the exacting demands of long-term strategic competition. If confirmed, I will do my level best to help implement the strategy in a cost-effective and timely manner. The men and women in uniform, as well as their civilian counterparts who serve the department, deserve no less from their senior leaders. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Now we'll start off where we ended momentarily. And Senator Reed and I feel that since we're going to be confining questions to 5 minutes, that we're going to have a second round of questioning, if that's all right with our witnesses. So I'll start off again with you, Ambassador Braithwaite. It's been very controversial, and just very briefly, when you think about the fact that the budget that's been submitted would be to support a 300-ship Navy, and I think most people agree it needs to be bigger than that. Do we hear about 355? Give very briefly, what size do you think a Navy we ought to have?
Sir, it needs to be minimally 355 ships. Hopefully, we build beyond that.
That's a good brief answer. I appreciate that. General Brown, I would ask why, because I agree with you. General Brown, you brought this up, and I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about the NDS. This is the chart. This is the plan that we've been following now since it came out, and that's 3 years ago. So General Goldfein was committed to that. I'd like to have you make a further comment, even though you've already made one about this, and that your commitment to following this is your pattern.
Senator Inhofe, Chairman, I'm actually very committed to the National Defense Strategy, and in my current position as the Pacific Air Forces Commander, I spent a lot of focus because 4 of the 5 challenges in the National Defense Strategy are in our region.
Appreciate it very much. And Dr. Anderson, I've talked to you about this before. This is something that I've been concerned about. In fact, we went through all those years without having an AFRICOM. It was kind of the forgotten continent, and now we see that those things that we were guessing that were going to be happening there are happening or have already happened. I would like to, we're looking right now at what China and Russia is doing in that continent. In fact, China is, that's the first time that they've actually started a major installation someplace other than their own city limits. And so we know what's happening there. I'd like to have you say in this remaining time that I have your thoughts about the role of AFRICOM and what your intentions are and your feelings are concerning that continent and its problems.
Thank you, Senator. AFRICOM, as you noted, was established a few years ago, just over, I believe, over a decade ago, and plays an important role in our national defense strategy. And it is complicated, of course, by the intrusion of the PRC and also to an extent the Russian Federation on the continent, and that those moves by the Chinese take a variety of different forms, and to include establishing a military base, its first overseas military base in Djibouti. So we are watching that very carefully, as well as a lot of their efforts elsewhere on the continent, to include all the sort of predatory economic things that they are doing, trying to insert their workers there and exploit local economies and make economies dependent upon them economically and financially. So we are vigilant, and we are watching very closely what our competitors are doing on the continent. Of course, Russia is very involved in the Libyan conflict, and it's a very unfortunate situation there. So in terms of the Department of Defense is looking very closely at all its combatant commands, to include AFRICOM, and to ensure that we have the right mix of forces, the right posture throughout the continent. And under Secretary Esper's leadership, we're doing exactly that. And this is an effort at right-sizing our forces there. There have been some press reports that we are cutting and running, that we are abandoning Africa, and those are flatly false. We're looking hard at right-sizing and making those decisions. One decision that Secretary Esper has made is to allocate the SFAB, Security Force Assistance Brigade, to AFRICOM, which we think is a good example of getting the right forces into theater.
Well, yeah, you're right that they came in and there has to be an examination, a constant examination on the placement of troops around the world. It happened that Senator Rounds and I were in Africa when it was rumored that the decision has been made by the administration to reduce there, and obviously that was not accurate. And in fact, our secretary actually came forth and said that's a place where we cannot do that. And so I think that I have a question to you is, do you agree with the secretary on the continent of Africa?
Yes, I agree with Secretary Esper. He's taking a hard look at this. He has not made any final decisions, but I would expect those will be forthcoming. And another part of this effort is we are working closely with allies and partners, and we certainly encourage our European allies, for example, to assume a greater role on the African continent, because they certainly have interests there as well.
That's good. Senator Reid.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador, you made it very clear in the opening statement that the Navy chain of command is in disarray. Nothing illustrates that more than the Roosevelt situation, when an acting Secretary of the Navy is calling directly a carrier commander and trying to work out problems with him. Something's wrong. And when that carrier commander's immediate superior is several staterooms down the hall and there's no apparent communication, something is wrong. It goes to trust, as you alluded to. It goes to the culture of the Navy. It goes to reliance upon the chain of command by civilian authorities of getting advice and supporting them, et cetera. And it's also, I think, in your position, keeping your eyes and the Navy's eyes focused on the threat and the force, the fleets at sea and all the force, and not being distracted by some of the things that happen here in Washington. But what specific steps are you going to take to correct this situation? Because without a functioning chain of command, without a culture of trust and confidence, the platforms are irrelevant.
Senator, I would agree with you, and I thank you for the question. As I learned over the course of my career, again, in both the public and private sector, culture trumps everything. As Mr. Drucker, a famous entrepreneur, says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So culture is the one thing that creates for an organization a sense of belonging, a sense of good order and discipline. It is my #1 priority, if I'm confirmed, to restore the appropriate culture in the United States Navy. Culture exists. I won't say it's broken. I think it's been tarnished. I think the events over the last several years have helped see that occur. And if I'm confirmed, I will make sure that I get at that. Again, predicated on good order and discipline, empowering people to understand their responsibilities along that chain of command, as you and I both talked about yesterday, as well as setting the tone here from the very highest level. I think it's contingent upon leadership first to establish that, and then hold those who are responsible throughout the chain for the same.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and I think this dialogue will continue many, many months forward. General Brown, one of the big issues that will face you going forward is the issue of sustainment costs. We buy very expensive platforms, but those expenses sometimes pale in comparison to sustaining those equipment. Do you have any sense of what you're going to do to tackle this problem? And first of all, do you recognize this as a serious issue?
Thanks, Senator. I do recognize it as a serious issue. And if confirmed, I think the key part for me is to be working very closely with our industry partners on how we bring down sustainment costs. At the same time, we work internally inside the Air Force to address some of our processes to ensure that we are able to manage the costs, because we can't just modernize and not sustain. We're going to be able to do both to implement the National Defense Strategy.
Thank you. And Dr. Anderson, we signed an agreement on February 29th with respect to Afghanistan. The situation has changed dramatically. First, could you comment on how these changes might have affected the goal of the agreement, which was the eventual departure of U.S. forces and some type of reconciliation? and and also comment on the fact that implicit in the agreement is our continued support of Afghan security forces to the tune of billions of dollars a year. Is that likely if we no longer have troops on the ground? So your comments briefly, I'm sorry.
So since the 29th of February, we've seen, frankly, mixed results in terms of Taliban compliance to the agreement. They have refrained from attacking U.S. and coalition troops. They have refrained from attacking major urban centers. But they have been attacking robustly and at an unfortunate level and an unprecedented level our Afghan partners. And this is greatly concerning to us. And we will continue to proceed to our level of 8,600 within 135 days, which is approximately mid-July. But the Department has made very clear that beyond that, reductions will be conditions-based. So we will look very closely as the situation unfolds. In this context, assuming conditions allow further drawdown, we remain committed to our Afghan partners. They have paid a heavy price. The Afghan National Defense Security Forces. They have, in fact, been doing most of the fighting since 2015. And we have been supporting them in our train, advise, and assist role. So it is my view that going forward in Afghanistan, we absolutely need to continue to maintain a level of commitment in terms of our assistance to them so that they can continue to help defend their country.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Brown, the Air Force is responsible for 2 of the 3 legs of our nuclear triad, and it's carrying out a number of programs that are vital to modernization of the deterrent, such as the B-21, the GBSD, the long-range standoff weapon, as well as our nuclear command and control and communications architecture. Sir, do you believe that these programs and the overall modernization of our nuclear deterrent is necessary?
Senator, most definitely.
We often hear calls of disarmament, and this committee has also heard several of our last STRATCOM commanders testify that there's no margin left in our schedule for recapitalization. Is it your understanding, General, that further delay is not an option and that these programs must proceed on schedule if we are going to continue to be able to field an effective deterrent?
Senator, I'm in complete agreement.
I understand the Air Force is considering awarding the GBSD contract early. I know the lack of margin in that program is particularly concerning, and Congress has pushed the Department to find ways to accelerate it in order to ease the burden on the schedule. If the Air Force determines that it is a viable option, I certainly want to express my support for that, sir. Yesterday, we had a good conversation about the future of the Air Force and the need to adapt in the face of the growing challenges that are posed by our adversaries. Given those threats, do you believe the Air Force is currently large enough to accomplish the missions required by the National Defense Strategy?
To an extent. I mean, in the immediate term, I think we are, but we still got to be able to grow to the 386. That's the goal. Anything less than 386 incurs risk. And so our ability to actually get capability in the hands of the warfighter faster, to be able to move faster so we can compete against our adversaries are important aspects to help us with that national defense strategy.
Now, you and I talked about that, being able to balance the capability along with the capacity that is needed as well. And when you look at the new platforms and the new technologies that will be coming, that are here now and that will be coming, and how critical the use of those platforms are for us in meeting that challenge. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and maybe get into how we establish a balance between manned and unmanned?
Sure. You know, some of the things I think about is even as you look at trying to get to 386 or working towards 386, if we don't achieve 386, we may be a little bit smaller than 386, but we'll be more capable. So effectively, you're getting closer to 386. And with that, it's not just the manned platforms, it's also how we do manned-unmanned teaming. And the XQ-58 Valkyrie is one of those systems that we can team up with, particularly some of our 5th-gen capability to increase our range, to increase our awareness, to increase our strike capability. And so those are the kind of things we're working on inside of the Air Force.
Do you also work with our allies in this regard as well? I mean, it's very important to work within your branch, to work within our government. How do you feel about working with our allies?
Actually, that's one of my joys, is I spend a lot of time, matter of fact, most of my time as a general officer, I've spent overseas, and I have a pretty good band of relationships with our partners. And so constant dialogue is important with those that we share interests and values with.
And how do you see yourself working, if you are confirmed, within the system to be able to make sure that any new platforms are incorporated and are incorporated in a wise manner, but also in a manner that it doesn't take forever?
Well, Senator, that's one of the things I'm really focused on. Having been a warfighter for the past number of years here in these key positions, is how do we actually speed up that process? And we can't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. And that's why I believe in spiral development and being able to get something into the hands of our warfighters versus nothing in our hands of our warfighters 8 to 10 years down the road.
Thank you, General, and thank you to the other two gentlemen as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Shaheen.
Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you for your willingness to consider serving at this challenging time in our history. General Brown, I want to begin with you. I had the opportunity to speak with General Goldfein earlier this week. As you're probably aware, the 157th Air Refueling Wing at Pease National Guard Base in New Hampshire is the first National Guard to receive the new KC-46 tanker. I had the opportunity to be there when the first tanker arrived, and so I followed this issue very closely. General Goldfein seemed optimistic that the agreement that had been reached with Boeing would provide a path forward to fix the remote vision system and some of the other problems with the tanker, but clearly we're still several years away from having tankers that are going to do the refueling that we want them to do. So can you tell us how, if confirmed, you would keep that program on track and ensure that it's ready to go as soon as possible to do its air refueling mission?
Senator, I think one of the key roles I have is to, one, work with our acquisition professionals to move it forward, but also with our industry partner, Boeing. And there's a new CEO, and having talked to General Goldfein, that CEO is pretty serious about delivering that capability. And so, for me personally, building a relationship with the CEO of Boeing so we can have frank dialogue, particularly if it gets off track. But the goal is to keep it on track and get it into the hands as quickly as possible.
Well, thank you. I was pleased to hear that the new CEO at Boeing seems more committed to fixing this than previously. Ambassador Braithwaite, our nation's 4 public shipyards handle our aircraft carriers, our submarines. They're really the backbone of our naval power, and we need to modernize these shipyards and increase the dry dock capacity. I'm a supporter of the Navy's Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Plan, which was released in February of 2008. I wonder if you could tell me if you've had the opportunity to review the plan, and if so, can you share your thoughts on the importance of investing in the Navy's public shipyard infrastructure?
Yes, Senator, thank you very much. And I have spent some time up at the shipyard there in Portsmouth, and have always been impressed by the patriotism and the commitment to our national security that the employees exhibit every day. Maintenance is one of those things that has never been the thing that the Navy has very focused on. It is always more interested in building new ships and new airplanes, much like in any other situation where deferred maintenance becomes something that you get to later. Having served at the Philadelphia shipyard before they closed that, that taught me that lesson very up close and personal. And it becomes a double-edged sword because not only do you defer the amount of resources required to upgrade the ships, but you also defer the requirements to upgrade the actual shipyard. I have had a chance to look at the PSYOP. I agree with it over a 20-year period. I will look to make that a priority as we look forward because, as I shared with Senator King, whenever you have any vessel, ship, aircraft tied to a pier, not doing its job out at the tip of the spear, that's a waste to the taxpayers. And as a good steward, I think we have an obligation to make sure that those ships and aircraft and submarines are out doing their jobs.
Well, thank you, and I'm pleased to hear that you've visited the shipyard. We hope you will come back, and I'm sure you know that in New Hampshire, we take part ownership of that shipyard, yes, just as Maine does. So Senator King isn't the only one who's following this issue very closely. Sorry, Angus. Let me also, because you mentioned the importance of the employees at the shipyard, and clearly they are, their effectiveness is the reason that that shipyard is considered the most productive in the country. I had an opportunity to talk to several of the workers there about their concerns with the COVID-19 pandemic, and as you're probably aware, there are a number of people there who have tested positive. We lost a shipyard worker, and they're very concerned about having the right personal protective equipment, the masks that they really need when they're working in close quarters in the yard. And if that can't be provided, that hazard pay be considered for those people who are working in those dangerous circumstances. Can you commit to me that you will look into this and see if we can ensure that the people who are working on our subs have the protective equipment that they need to do their jobs?
Senator, absolutely. I can tell you that one of the most impressive things that I've learned in the last few weeks is working with Assistant Secretary Gertz, who's explained to me the patriotism that these workers have displayed each and every day. They've gone into harm's way and continue to ensure that our ships are ready and deployable, and that speaks a lot about their character. So I think it's incumbent upon me, if I'm confirmed, to ensure as the senior leader in the department that they get the equipment and the safety gear that they would need in order to be able to do that job.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you all for your service to our country. General Brown, I enjoyed our phone call yesterday, and I thank you for your acceptance of my invitation that if you are confirmed to visit Ellsworth Air Force Base. Following up on our discussion, I'd appreciate your sharing with the committee the perspectives you shared with me regarding two programs. First, could you explain the importance of not allowing a capability gap for the bomber force as the legacy fleet continues to age while we wait for the B-21 to come online? And secondly, could you give us your perspective on what we need to do to assure that the full buy of F-35s is made to be able to avoid the situation that we had years ago when we dramatically reduced the buy of the F-22 fighters?
Thank you, Senator. You know, the first on the B-21 and our bombers, the key part is getting the B-21 delivered and delivered on time. At the same time, maintaining the capability we have with our current our bomber force. I do not want to get to a point where we have a fork in the road where we have to make a tough call. And so if we can keep all those on track and so we don't have any gaps, that's an important aspect to me. For the F-35, the key part, and it was mentioned a little bit earlier, is sustainment costs and the cost per flying hour. I know General Goldfein has met with the various contractors and has commitments and working with the Joint Program Office to bring those costs down. By bringing those costs down, it makes us more affordable to be able to actually buy the F-35 buy that we intend to have, and we can provide the capability we require for the Air Force.
Thank you. General Brown, also, I was kind of surprised. I was not aware that the Air Force, unlike the Army and the Navy, the Air Force budget contains a significant pass-through element where funding is passed through the Air Force on its way to other DOD agencies that then execute it. I also understand that the Air Force exercises no control over and receives no benefit from this funding. In fact, in the FY20 budget that we're executing right now, the Department of the Navy budget top line is about $206 billion. The Department of the Army's top line is $177 billion. And the Department of the Air Force's top line is $205 billion. However, once you discount the pass-through in the Air Force budget, the Air Force's true top-line budget is about $166 billion, the lowest of the three military departments. Basically, about 3.2% of the Army's is passed through, and about 1% of the Navy's budget, as I understand it, is passed through. I'd like your perspective on this particular practice and anything that you would like to comment on.
Sure. Senator, I'm aware of the pass-through, and it's contained in the Air Force budget. I'm very transparent, and I like transparency, and so I think it's nice to be able to be reflective of the budget that the Air Force is actually responsible for. So if confirmed, I'm happy to look into that aspect of our budget and then work with the various entities to address.
Thank you. Ambassador Braithwaite, in looking back over yesterday, we had a very good phone conversation, and I appreciated that. As you know, I'm similar to what you'll probably hear from Senator King and from what you just heard from Senator Shaheen. I do have a concern, even though I don't have any in any of those depots in my home state of South Dakota. I think it's very important that we talk about the ability to handle a 355-ship Navy with the appropriate depot capabilities. My concern is that while we've seen some improvements in some areas of maintenance in the Navy, and in fact, I congratulate the Navy on bringing up on their FA-18s, they brought those up to an 80% capability rate right now. When we talk about the nuclear attack submarines that we've now got 4 of them that are waiting for dry dock. USS Boise may very well have been in dry dock waiting for a refueling for perhaps 7 to 8 years. You've got 3 more behind it waiting as well. I'd like your perspective on what we do with regard to depot maintenance and with regard to accelerating and getting that piece of property that the taxpayers paid for back into operational condition in a more timely fashion.
Thank you, Senator, and I did enjoy our conversation yesterday. I did look into the USS Boise, which is not only unfortunate, but, sir, is unacceptable. I understand that the department has took a turn and is looking into how they might work with some other private yards to assist. But I believe, as we discussed yesterday, when you look at all the priorities and you assess those, just like we do around our kitchen tables with our families, of the requirements that we have, they have to balance shipbuilding, maintenance, education, training, everything across the board. I look forward to the opportunity to have that opportunity, if confirmed, to look into this. Maintenance has always been something that has been deferred, that I have experienced in my Navy career. As a pilot, there were oftentimes, many times, that aircraft weren't available, and we ended up being on the flight schedule and then removed from the flight schedule. I did get some good news, though, that the rates are moving upwards, as you indicate, especially for our surface platforms. We were at 20% completion rate 2 years ago, up to 40%, on its way to 70% this year before COVID-19. So I salute, again, Assistant Secretary Gertz on his efforts. I believe what he has put in place and the team that he has led is moving in the right direction. And I will ensure that I remain vigilant so that we get to where we don't have these ships in the queue, and we get them back out to the tip of the spear, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of our nominees for your service to our country. Admiral Braithwaite, I think you are absolutely correct about the need for focus on culture in these very choppy waters, as you've correctly described them. And I welcome your commitment to changing the culture and eliminating any possible perception on the part of our sailors that there is a culture of retaliation against reporting instances of questionable judgment or, for example, infection on any of our ships with COVID-19. And I believe you stated that very forthrightly yesterday in our conversation. I also welcome your offer to come back to Groton.
Yes, sir.
Where you've spent time in the past. And your commitment stated yesterday, and I'd like you to reaffirm it now, that you believe that we ought to be constructing 2 submarines a year so as to reach the required level that we maintain and enhance our predominance in the underwater domain.
Yes, sir, Senator. As we discussed yesterday, as a naval aviator who spent a lot of time hunting submarines, Soviet submarines, I worked very closely with our subsurface force. Their professionalism is beyond reproach, and they are extremely important to our national security. I believe we should work towards 66 boats, as you and I discussed, and I will be a big advocate for that.
And for the construction, hopefully, of that second submarine in FY 2021, because it's right now on the unfunded priorities list.
Yes, sir.
But I welcome your commitment to making sure it is built at Electric Boat. And also the sensitivity that you've demonstrated in the commitment to our workforce there, because they are as vital as our men and women in uniform. They enable us to have the ability to make sure that our men and women in uniform do not have a fair fight, that they have that predominance in undersea warfare. And in that connection, making sure that maintenance of the USS Hartford and the USS John Warner is potentially available for work so as to maintain the stability of that workforce at Groton.
Yes, sir. I believe that the industrial base is the fragile part of the equation towards national security, and we need to ensure there is stability. Again, I saw this living for 3 years at the Navy shipyard in Philadelphia. Without that, the workforce begins to not be as capable, but also understanding the demands to ensure that we can get the ships out and back to the tip of the spear.
The situation in Groton, as in many manufacturing sites and spaces in the United States right now, can be very perilous. I've talked to many of the workers there who sometimes feel threatened because of inadequate personal protective equipment, but also because of the need for better staging and sighting of workers, which is very difficult to do in building submarines because the level of precision and skill is so demanding. So I'd like your commitment that you will encourage Electric Boat and require them, in fact, to meet the best standards of safety and, in fact, encourage OSHA and other agencies responsible for safety to set emergency standards where necessary to protect workers in those situations.
So, Senator, this comes back to something that I believe is at the core of any relationship, whether between you and me or anybody. Trust is so important. So I look forward to the opportunity, if confirmed, to reestablish that trust inside the Navy, up and down the chain of command, but also the trust we have with the private yards and the leadership and the workers at the public yards as well. So again, if confirmed, I will work with the leadership at Electric Boat and all the private contractors to ensure that we establish that trust.
Finally, on the issue of trust, which is critical, I welcomed your commitment yesterday to follow the recommendations of the ongoing investigation regarding Captain Crozier's removal and to return him to command if that's the appropriate recommendation from the investigation that's now underway. I've recommended an Inspector General investigation, which may follow if necessary, but thank you for your commitment in that regard as well.
I look forward to the investigation, and I believe that Chairman Milley was correct. I believe in, as we discussed yesterday, that whenever you're confronted with a challenge like this, it's best to pause, consider all the facts, and then make the right decision. I learned that in flight school as a young naval aviator, that whenever any bell or whistle went off in your cockpit, the most important thing to do was sit on your hands for 2 seconds. And my Marine on-wing instructor made sure I did that, because then you can assess the problem correctly before shutting down the wrong system.
Thank you very much. I look forward to supporting your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Ernst.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being with us today. We appreciate your time and your commitment, and I want to give a special shout out to your families as well. We wish they could be here with you. I know they are with you in spirit. Ambassador Braithwaite, thank you. We had a great conversation yesterday, and given maybe another day, we could have solved many of the world's problems. But I do appreciate your time and attention to a number of very important issues and regions. And part of the discussion that I found very fascinating was your perspective, not only as a naval officer, but also as an ambassador now. And serving in Norway and the close proximity to Russia, you have been able to see up close Russia's intentions in that region. And you went on to describe the posturing of Russia, as well as we talked about Indo-PACOM with China, and comparing what Russia is doing compared with China and where they would like to see themselves positioned globally. If you could share that discussion using your perspective as a naval officer and an ambassador, and where you think we need to be positioning as a Navy in regards to Russia and then in regards to China.
Well, thank you for that question, Senator, and especially for your time yesterday. I enjoyed our conversation as well. I've spent a lot of time in the Arctic, both as a U.S. ambassador as well as a naval officer, and I've come to appreciate that part of the world for the importance, and especially it emerges, is becoming more important to everybody. And most people in America don't realize, because we don't see that here within the continental United States, although Senator Sullivan sees it a little bit up in Alaska. But the Chinese and the Russians are everywhere, especially the Chinese. You'd be alarmed at the amount of Chinese activity off the coast of Norway in the high north. And we need to be vigilant to that. We need to understand why. My old boss, General Mattis, who I had the great fortune to work for at Joint Forces Command when I was a young Navy captain, he and I spoke just a couple years ago about this, that Russia's hope is to be relevant again on the world stage, where we all believe, or all come to understand, that China wants to be dominant on that same world stage. And they have really pressed hard upon Norway to be part of that calculus. If you look at the northern sea route between Kirkenes, the most northern city in Norway, coming across the top of Russia, it could reduce the amount of commerce moved out of China to European markets by half. China has launched a charm campaign to try to win Norway over, after, in 2010, forcing them, or trying to force them, to withdraw the Nobel Peace Prize to a Chinese dissident by the name of Li Xiaobo. The Norwegians, proud people, independent people, they stood up against the Chinese, and they suffered for that economically. But China now recognizes the importance of Kirkenes, securing a western terminus on a northern sea route, and they are up there and trying to, again, win over the people of northern Norway. The United States Navy, as you and I discussed, Senator, is at the vanguard of that. It provides some of the only capabilities to be able to do power projection in that part of the world. We are there. We currently have 3 destroyers that are sailing along with both the United Kingdom Navy as well as the Royal Norwegian Navy, to ensure that that power projection exists, and deterrent is part of the calculus for those of us in NATO. And I think we need to continue to do that. We continue to need to be vigilant, we continue to be present, and that requires an adequate-sized Navy to be there.
Very good. I appreciate that. And General Brown, just very briefly, as I only have about a minute remaining, the Air Force does provide very valuable support to our ground forces. Those of us that were ground pounders really do appreciate your cover. But our ground force commanders and the JTACs are are fully integrated with our air crews to provide precision fires, especially our SOF, which is a community that I have close ties to. As the Air Force focuses on developing their fifth-generation platforms and fighting in a near-peer contested environment rather than the uncontested environment that they are very used to right now, what will that training look like for that next generation of pilots and crews, and how are you going to work with our ground forces to incorporate their needs as you're doing that?
Well, it's part of the work we have to do with our the rest of the joint team is understand their scheme of maneuver and how we work our joint warfighting concept and how we work together. One of the key aspects that we are able to do as an Air Force is to provide some of the command and control aspects to support. And with that is the advanced battle management system and how we're able to connect to various sensors and shooters. And so the key part for me is to understand for our sister services, what is their highest priority, so we can work together on that versus us, going our own way. And that's, to me, is the most important thing I can do, is actually understand what they need to do, what mission sets they have, and how I'm able to support, and vice versa.
Very good. And SOCOM Commander General Clark is very appreciative of the work he has been able to do with General Goldfein and the transition of some of those platforms to SOCOM. We hope that great relationship continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, to allay any confusion that may have been sowed by the comments of my distinguished colleague from New Hampshire, the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is in Maine. I just want to clear that up. Ambassador Braithwaite, you and I talked about the DDG being the workhorse of the Navy.
It is.
An important ship, a mature design. We're in the middle of a multi-year right now in 2018, 2022. I hope you will give serious consideration to a second multi-year starting in 2023 for two reasons. One, it's significant taxpayer savings when we buy in bulk, as you were, and also it helps to ensure the stability of the industrial base. Will you commit to giving serious consideration to that possibility?
Absolutely, Senator. As you and I discussed, the DDG-51, the Greyhound of the fleet, truly is the backbone, and something we have relied upon as the department for the power projection that platform provides. And as a former group purchasing executive, I couldn't agree with you more in a group buy approach. That's great for the people of America and being good stewards to the taxpayer, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As we're in the midst of this crisis, the Navy has deemed both its public and private shipyards essential in terms of continuing their work. On the other hand, 2 points. One is necessarily there have been delays and contract delays because of the interruption in the work caused by the illness. I hope you'll work with Secretary Gertz and Secretary Lord on flexibility in the contracts and indeed perhaps additional funding in order to compensate the yards for working around this difficult situation.
Senator, I believe we've all learned a lot through this crisis, and we have a lot more to learn. If confirmed, I will work very closely with Secretary Gertz to ensure that we have the resources placed appropriately, God forbid if we were ever to encounter anything like this again.
And flexibility in terms of deadlines. I think
yes, sir. The impact has not been as great as what I was originally concerned. I understand we're at about 80%, and we will build back from that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The other piece of that is because the Navy has deemed these facilities essential, it's meant that their workers, mostly civilians, have gone to work
yes,
and
sir.
had to. And I hope that you will work with both the public yard officials, but also the companies involved with the private yards to be sure that they have the capability to keep their workers safe under these circumstances and the flexibility in terms of production schedules and such in order to facilitate safe workplaces for these patriotic Americans that are going to work every day to keep our country safe.
I think if we've learned anything in this, Senator, we've learned the fact that there are patriots and patriots in every sector of this country. As a healthcare executive, seeing what healthcare people have done and how they've stepped up and put their lives at risk to serve others. And it's the same with the shipyard workers who have done the same. Many of us are able to quarantine ourselves. They have not been.
Right.
And they have continued to be out there on the front lines and have demonstrated, like our men and women in uniform do every day, of their patriotism and their commitment to our national security. That is something that I hold very sacred responsibility, if I'm confirmed, is to ensure for their safety as well. So whether it's a public yard, as in Portsmouth, or the private yard in Bath, as you and I discussed, I will look to support those efforts, Senator.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's very important to the men and women that work at those yards. General Brown, quickly, I think one thing I hope you will not lose focus on is the execution of the B-21 contract. As you know, we've had a rocky road in recent decades with major procurement contracts. This one seems to be on track, and I think it's been worked very hard and very well by the Air Force and by the contractor. I hope that you will commit to paying close attention to the progress of that, and so that we don't have to come back here and talk about massive overruns and delays, or any overruns and delays.
Senator, that is exactly my goal, if confirmed, is to ensure that it stays on track.
Finally, quick question. You and I talked about this. Again, I think attention needs to be paid to the potential gap in tanker capacity. We could have all the airplanes in the world, but if they can't be refueled to get to mission, we've got a failure of ability to project power. General Lyons, as you know, has projected a gap, if you will, in terms of tanker capacity over the next 5 to 10 years. I hope that also will be a focus of your attention. I consider that an urgent matter.
Yes, Senator, it will be.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your service and for being here today, and my best to your families as well. We look forward to seeing and meeting all of them at some point, but we're proud of you, and I know they are. General Brown, I wanted to visit with you a little bit. First of all, thank you for the conversation yesterday, and appreciate the consistency of your answers today. I especially appreciate your commitment to Senator Fisher relating to the nuclear fleet keeping modernization on track, on time, particularly the GBSD. Also to Senator Rounds relating to the bombers. As you know, we have both of those at Minot Air Force Base. In fact, General Goldfein will be in Minot next week. And so we know that's among not only our highest priorities, but the highest priorities as per the National Defense Strategy. One of the things also that I was pleased about was your answer to Senator Rounds relating to the pass-through. And I would like you to know, and Senator Rounds and the rest of the committee to know that I am working with the committee staff on separating that $39 billion or so from the Air Force budget. I just think it's so important, as per your commitment to transparency, that we as a government are transparent not only to policymakers but to the public as we try to gain their trust, and to the degree we need to protect too many of the details of that budget that certainly can be put somewhere in DOD other than in the Air Force. So I hope we can get that done this year, and appreciate your commitment to transparency.
Thank you.
With that, one of the things that you talked about, that you and I talked about yesterday that impressed me coming from you was, and it was you who initiated the point about the relationship with academia, the community, as well as the Air Force. And of course, in Grand Forks, we have a wonderful relationship with the University of North Dakota School of Aerospace Sciences there, the Odegaard School, Flight School, as well as UAS program, as well as space. And would love to get you up there as soon as possible to show you all of that when the time is right and we can do it in a safe manner. And would love to get your commitment to that as soon as practicable.
Yes, Senator.
And with that, I'd like to also visit and get your input on something that somebody else brought up earlier related to the Northern Tier and to the Arctic. So when we think of the Arctic, when we think of proximity, with all due respect to the Navy, proximity to those important adversaries, we also think of the importance of the Northern Tier basis, and would love your input on how you might see an Arctic mission that involves Northern Tier Air Force bases.
It's the Northern Tier Air Force bases, the ability to deter, and I watch day to day because of the forces that I have stationed in Alaska in support of NORCOM, NORAD, and the activities they do against the Russians. At the same time, as I look at the Arctic, I also look at the Antarctic, which is also, it was in the Indo-PACOM area responsibility. You start to see competition there. And so the key aspect for me is how do we use and have a good understanding of what's going on in the Arctic and how we use our Northern Tier bases to compete, deter, and ideally win if required.
Very good. I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the nominees. This is as strong a panel of nominees for positions as we've had before us, and I plan to support all of you. Admiral Braithwaite, I appreciated our conversation the other day, and I want to ask you a question. It just strikes me as unusual. You talked in your opening statement about the choppy waters that the Navy is in from a leadership standpoint. This strikes me as unusual. The Secretary of the Navy, Secretary Spence, or somebody who I had a high regard for, was essentially relieved in the middle of a personnel battle. Military discipline was being carried out against a Navy SEAL based upon other sailors coming forward with allegations about that individual, which is extremely difficult to do. The President decided to intervene in that military justice process. The Secretary of the Navy then, trying to maintain some harmony in the ranks, started to work with the White House to try to work that out. He was eventually relieved of the position. But he was involved in a personnel matter deep within the organization, one that was very, very important. The acting Secretary of the Navy was recently relieved for involving himself in an individual personnel matter. Captain Crozier was doing what he thought he needed to do to keep folks on the Roosevelt safe. There was an ongoing investigation into the situation on the Roosevelt, but Acting Secretary Modly sort of predetermined the investigation and made the decision on his own, apparently without the agreement of CNO Gilday, to terminate Captain Crozier from his leadership of the Roosevelt. These two incidents back-to-back with the last secretary and the acting made me sort of rethink the whole question of what is the civilian secretary's responsibility? What should it be with respect to personnel matters? That a civilian secretary would have policy responsibility broadly for personnel within the Navy is obvious. We would want a civilian secretary to take that role seriously, and you have the background to do it. But it struck me that these two instances were civilian secretaries being involved in individual personnel decisions in ways that I found a little bit unusual. I've only been on the committee for 7 years, and perhaps it's been more common. But should you be confirmed, what do you think your responsibilities are with respect to personnel matters? Because if I were in the ranks as a sailor, the notion of a political appointee being directly engaged in individual personnel actions for people sort of far down the chain of command, I would be concerned about that. How will you approach this issue should you be confirmed?
Senator, as you and I discussed yesterday, I've had the good fortune to have served under some great secretaries of the Navy. John Lehman comes to mind. He's a mentor to me. I spoke just the other night with Senator Warner, who also from your state. Had 2 conversations with him, in fact, in the last couple of days. Good order and discipline starts with the chain of command. That has been sacrosanct to military forces since the beginning of time. And if I'm confirmed, I will ensure that that is understood from the Secretary's office all the way to the smallest vessel in the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. I believe that our commanders, the COs, ships and commands, are vested with the responsibility to be accountable as well as to lead those who serve under their leadership. And I believe they should be empowered to do such. Again, I have lived my entire life believing in the chain of command, believing in ensuring the chain of command is informed, both up and down, and making sure that people have trust and confidence in that chain of command.
Can I ask you, Admiral, Ambassador Braithwaite, in the chain of command, do you see yourself as Secretary sort of intervening in personnel decisions that are fairly distant down the chain of command?
No, I mean, no, I don't. I believe that the men and women in uniform at all ranks should have the opportunity and should have established the ability to ensure that they are making the decisions to lead their men and women appropriately.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On behalf of Chairman Inhofe, let me recognize Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to each of you for being here. Congratulations on your nomination. Let me see if I can cover a fair amount of ground here in a short amount of time. Dr. Anderson, enjoyed speaking with you the other day, yesterday, I can't remember, but the days all run together recently. Let me ask you this. The National Defense Strategy has said that the Indo-Pacific is our priority theater. The current Secretary has said that the Indo-Pacific, Secretary of Defense that is our priority theater. Do you agree with those assessments?
Yes, Senator, I do.
Can you give us a sense of why?
So in the context of reviewing our strategy, which came out in 2018, we looked at changing circumstances over the last decade plus, while we were very committed and focused on fighting violent extremism. And during that time, our competitors, the PRC and the Russian Federation, took full advantage of our focus elsewhere. And they have done a variety of things in both their respective theaters to strengthen their position and put our position at greater risk. So looking at that, those trends, based upon that assessment, that's how we came to prioritizing the National Defense Strategy.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the difficult strategic choices that have to be made in order to prioritize the Indo-Pacific, particularly as it relates to CENTCOM. Do you think that we have an effective deterrence strategy currently against Iran? And how can we improve that strategy without sending more forces to the region?
So I think we have reestablished deterrence, at least in a conventional sense, against Iran. I'm very concerned, however, about their continued backing of Shia militia groups and who have acted and may well act again in the future, and with some degree of difficulties in terms of attributing. But we do hold Tehran responsible, and we are hopeful that they in fact get the message going forward that we are committed to our allies and partners in the Middle East. We're going to protect our forces, and we're going to do all the things that we said we have done.
Can we do that without sending more forces to the region?
I believe we can.
Let me ask you about another flashpoint there. The Taliban are undermining a peace deal in Afghanistan. If that deal collapses, when do you think we should withdraw remaining troops from the region?
So I'm kind of leery of talking to hypotheticals. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to reassess all the conditions going forward. I would hope that the deal would not collapse. They have shown a commitment to at least part of it so far, and hopefully they will honor the remaining portions. If they don't, then we'll reassess and we'll do what we need to do.
What I'm driving at and what you and I discussed, Dr. Anderson, and I appreciated our conversation, is this tension between our commitments in CENTCOM and our secure needs in CENTCOM and our pacing theater in Indo-PACOM. And these are difficult. There's no easy answers here. Certainly I don't have any easy answers, but this is going to be your job, finding and recommending answers. And I want to underscore that it seems to me vital in this time, in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis and its direct relationship with China, as the whole world is seeing the malign intent of the Chinese Communist Party and the geostrategic danger of China, to me, it is more imperative than ever that we find ways to focus on INDOPACOM, on the PRC as our pacing theater and as our pacing threat, and make hard choices in order to do so, because the truth is we simply can't do it all. We're not going to spend $2 trillion on defense. We simply cannot do it all. We have to make hard choices, and that's going to be part of your job, so I'll be counting on you to do it. Just another point on this. I've advocated, as you know, and we talked about it, for a Pacific Deterrence Initiative that would address the requirements set out in the INDOPACOM 1253 report. I think the European Defense Initiative has seen great success. I'd like to see us do something similar in INDOPACOM. If INDOPACOM is our priority theater, then why wouldn't we embrace a similar deterrence initiative there as we have in EUCOM?
So the independent assessment provided by INDOPACOM has been delivered to Congress, and we owe you a briefing, both OSD and the Joint Staff, and we're prepared to do that. I agree with you that the European Defense Initiative has been successful, and there is a case to be made for considering a similar arrangement in the Indo-Pacific theater. And if confirmed, I certainly commit to taking a look at that.
Thank you very much. General, Ambassador, I don't want you to feel left out. I'll have some questions for the record for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for your service, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Heinrich.
General Brown, I want to start with by saying I was really encouraged to see the Air Force select Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico as the preferred location for basing an F-16 training squadron that has been temporarily stationed at that installation since 2017. And should you be confirmed, I certainly look forward to working with you to address the Air Force's pilot shortfall, and would suggest that the Air Force continue to look to New Mexico to solve its most pressing training, testing, and technological challenges. Obviously, that's not a question; it's a statement. But I think you understand. And with regard to my first question for you, General, you provided answers in advance to policy questions for the committee ahead of today's hearing. And one of those questions asked specifically which capabilities the Air Force needs to develop to meet future challenges, to create a third offset, as many people have said. And you listed artificial intelligence, machine learning, hypersonics, and directed energy among your top priorities. I could not agree more with those particular priorities. Should you be confirmed, how exactly would you press the Air Force to more rapidly develop, test, and most importantly, field these critical capabilities?
Senator, one of the ways I'd look to do this is how we engage outside of the Air Force in some cases. Because when I think about the things I do on a day-to-day basis, when I search the internet and watch how I look at something and then the next page it shows up, there's that capability that's out there. And it's not always resident inside of the Department of Defense. And so it's how we work with academia, how we work with industry. And that's some of the things the Air Force is already doing. I just think we need to do more of it and to take advantage of all the capability we have within our nation.
I want to ask you a little bit as well about the Space Rapid Capabilities Office, which, as you know, is charged with developing low-cost, rapid reaction payloads to maintain the United States' critical advantage in space. Last March, before this committee, General Goldfein agreed emphatically that Space RCO was something that's working and should continue to act as an independent agency, just as it was designed to do when Congress established that office in 2018. Do you agree that Space RCO should remain an independent agency?
In some aspects, Senator, I'd kind of defer to General Raymond since it's under the Space Force. But the Air Force also has a Rapid Capability Office. And so the good part about our Rapid Capabilities Office, it actually is somewhat separated from the bureaucracy of the bigger machine, and to be able to move a bit faster.
Quite a bit faster, actually. And that's the point, is that that innovation is in large part dependent on that independence. In your most recent command of the Pacific Air Forces, you've been responsible for delivering air, space, and cyberspace capabilities to counter threats in the Indo-Pacific. What are your general takeaways of the Chinese capability and development with respect to hypersonics and directed energy?
Not as much on direct energy, but on hypersonics. I know they were making advancements in hypersonics, and just watching kind of the day-to-day intel and open source information.
Right. Are you confident that we are developing and testing and fielding our capabilities fast enough to meet that threat?
No, Senator. I think we can go faster. I think there's areas we can go faster, and I think this is where we've got to put our foot forward on some of these, and we're going to fail on some of these. But we're going to learn when we fail.
That's right.
As we go forward.
I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Wicker.
My turn? Yes. Thank you very much. Let me start with General Brown. You're an Air Force ROTC graduate, are you not?
That's correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Some Air Force ROTC graduates had less stellar careers than yours, but I'm glad to see a fellow ROTC reach the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Where'd you do your pilot training? I didn't see that in the bio.
Williams Air Force Base in Arizona.
Great, great. We train pilots in Mississippi also.
I've been to the base there in Mississippi.
And I don't think we don't need to have any fewer training bases, do you think?
No, Senator.
All right, good, good. Well, look, glad to have you, and I want to be a real friend. Let me move on to Ambassador Braithwaite. Thank you for what you said about 355 ships, and I think you said that's the minimum.
Yes, sir.
You know, what we want to do is take this requirement that comes from the generals and the admirals and rely on the folks out there that tell us what the requirement is. There's word that there's another requirement maybe on some tables in the Pentagon that just haven't been published or haven't been supplied to us, and that the number would be substantially more than 355. What do you know about that, Ambassador?
Senator, I understand that OSD is looking into a comprehensive plan. If confirmed, I've not had any insight into that, but if confirmed, I look to a role as being the chief advocate to build a fleet of greater than 355 ships.
Well, we need to build a fleet that the top military brass, admirals and generals, that are tasked with keeping our country safe, tell us is needed, the minimum requirement that's needed. And I think that's what we've done, and we've got great leadership on the committee as a chair and ranking member who feel the same. And you know, we've got a little bit of a dip, and I say this about shipbuilding and also, General, about aircraft manufacturing. We got a little bit of a dip coming from OMB, and a lot of it's a function of the budget that we had to all agree to get a 2-year deal. The way I calculated, and also talking to the Secretary of Defense, an extra $20 billion would restore the curve and get us about where we need to be, combining shipbuilding and aircraft manufacturing. I would just say to my colleagues and anyone listening, our economy has been in the tank, and we've done some things in this Congress that were necessary to get us over the hump, and we found a way to appropriate the money and borrow the money and say we need to do it. In terms of the $3 trillion we've spent on our economy, it strikes me it's a relative bargain to try to come up with $20 billion, only $20 billion, to get us back where we need to be, to where the top military leaders in our country tell us will keep us safe. So I would just say that I think the collective leadership in this town and in this building ought to help us come up with that. Now, there's also, Ambassador Braithwaite, there's getting more out of your money. And I asked Secretary Gertz about block buys and a strategy to acquire more amphibious ships in the most cost-effective manner. Do you agree with Secretary Gertz when he says that that block buys are a great strategy, and will you continue to support amphibious ship procurement as Secretary, Ambassador Braithwaite?
Yes, sir, I do. As Senator King and I discussed the same thing at block buy, group purchasing. I'm a group purchasing healthcare executive. Block buy is a good deal.
Thank you very much. I think this is a mighty impressive panel, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and I certainly agree. Senator Hirono.
Welcome to all of you, and of course a special
Maisie, your mic.
special aloha to General Brown, who currently serves as Commander, Pacific Air Force. I ask the following two questions of every nominee who comes before any of the committees on which I sit, so I will ask them, and I'd like the responses starting from the ambassador. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator, I have not.
Dr. Anderson.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Question for the ambassador. The Red Hill bulk fuel tank facility in Hawaii is a strategic military asset consisting of 20 underground storage tanks, each holding 12.5 million gallons of fuel. This installation is in the order of the Hoover Dam. This facility is positioned above a large aquifer that supplies drinking water to many families on Oahu. The fuel tank leak that occurred in 2014 threatened the local drinking water supply and resulted in an administrative order of consent between the Navy, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Hawaii Department of Health. Although the Navy has performed tank upgrades and increased groundwater monitoring, concerns in the community remain. Can I get your commitment that if you are confirmed, you will work with me to make sure that the safety of Red Hill is a priority so that the local community's drinking water is protected and the military may continue to use this resource?
Senator, I lived in Waipahu, Waimea, and Barbers Point, and I've been past the Red Hill facility many times. I understand the importance to the people of Hawaii and to you, and I pledge my commitment to work with you to mitigate this and correct it.
Thank you very much. You've been asked a number of questions from a number of my colleagues, specifically Senator Shaheen and King, about the importance of the shipyard modernization. And of course, one of the 4 public shipyards is in Hawaii. And also, thank you for your commitment to make sure that the health and safety of the workers there, many of whom are civilians, are protected during this pandemic. Now, the current layout at the Pearl Harbor shipyard is inefficient and must be updated. And Pearl Harbor is slated for a new dry dock and a new dry dock production facility in the next several years. Funding this critical program will require a significant portion of the Navy's budget. Does the Navy's fiscal year 2021 budget contain or continue funding for shipyard modernization plans so that it will be implemented on time?
Senator, from what I understand, the PSYOP does include that over a 20-year period. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure the particulars of that, but I understand the importance of the Pearl Harbor shipyard and its importance geographically. So I look to work with the Department of the Navy, if confirmed, as we can prioritize those requirements.
I would certainly like to work closely with you because there have already been some setting aside of some funding that was supposed to go for a dry dock production facility to make the shipyard much more efficient, and that's already been set aside in anticipation of a new dry dock and a production facility that is close to the dry dock so that it makes more sense. So I would want to continue to work with you.
Yes, Senator.
Well, I would like to work with you because I haven't started yet. For Dr. Anderson, for over 3 years, Congress has directed the department to urgently deploy the Homeland Defense Radar, Hawaii. And this administration's own missile defense review released in 2019, as well as its budget request for fiscal year 2017 through 2020, the Indo-PACOM commander and missile defense experts at the Missile Defense Agency have all previously stated that this radar is critical for the defense of Hawaii against North Korea's advancing long-range missile capabilities. Dr. Anderson, if confirmed, will you continue to support the Missile Defense Agency's recommendation to build the Homeland Defense Radar, Hawaii, consistent with 2019 Missile Defense Review and its recommendations?
Yes, Senator, I commit to that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few other questions that I will submit for the record, and I thank all of you for being here once again.
Thank you very much. As we had stated in the beginning, we're going to have a second round and recognize Senator Sullivan now for his first round. Now Senator Sullivan is presiding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, I want to thank you for our meetings in the last couple days and also your very exceptional service, decades of service to our nation for all three of you. So I appreciate that, and I want to thank your families, even though they couldn't be here. I want to begin with my opening question that I ask all nominees, which is, will you commit to coming to the great state of Alaska with me to see what Billy Mitchell, the father of the U.S. Air Force, called the most strategic place in the world? Can I get a commitment from each of you to do that? Even though I know you've all been there before, this is a new commitment as part of your new job. Ambassador?
Senator, as we discussed yesterday, I look forward to going back to ADAC with you.
Excellent.
Yes, Senator.
General?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. This committee mandated a few years back the National Defense Strategy Commission report, which was co-chaired by former Undersecretary Eric Edelman and Admiral Gary Roughead. One of the findings and recommendations of that report was that it was important to reverse what they called, quote, an unhealthy trend whereby civilians, both in the Pentagon and importantly here in the Congress, were, quote, less and less involved in critical military decisions like basing decisions and the allocating of forces across theaters. For that reason, this committee has weighed in on a number of important basing decisions, such as the Oconus basing decision of the KC-46. And General Brown, I want to talk at length with you about that, as we did in my office the other day. In the NDAA in 2017 and 2018, this committee and the Congress put forward the kind of characteristics they believed were important when looking at the Oconus KC-46 basing decision. And in a hearing in 2018, I ran through a number of these characteristics mandated by Congress with Secretary Wilson and General Goldfein. I'd like to see if your views line up with theirs. One of the things that, again, mandated by the Congress, important to look at having the KC-46 located near not just one, but several COCOMs if possible. General Goldfein thought that was important. Do you agree with that, General? Sorry, I didn't hear you,
Senator.
You do? Okay. The other, again, characteristics mandated by Congress, near outstanding training facilities, especially for fifth-gen fighters, and training with joint and international partners. Secretary Wilson and General Goldfein said absolutely. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
The third area was being near facilities that have large airspace for training, large runways, hangars, air crews, maintenance, and very large fuel storage and distribution capabilities. Again, the former Chief of Staff, or current Chief of Staff, and Secretary of the Air Force said that was important. Do you agree with that?
I do.
And then in a hearing we had twice now, I asked the Secretary of Defense, particularly given the National Defense Strategy with regard to our Russia, China, North Korea challenges, if you co-located KC-46s that were co-located with 100 fifth-generation fighters, F-22s and F-35s, in Alaska, which is what we're going to have in the next year, what kind of message would that send to our adversaries in the NDS? China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. The Secretary of Defense has twice now stated the message that would be sent was that would give the message to our potential adversaries that the United States has extreme strategic reach. Do you agree with that, General?
I do, Senator.
Senator King mentioned an issue that just came up in a hearing just a couple months ago. General Lyons mentioned in his posture statement that the air refueling fleet is TRANSCOM's most stressed capability and #1 readiness concern, and it continues to underpin the Joint Force's ability to deploy an immediate force across all NDS mission areas, and that's critical. Based on Senator King's mention of this being an urgent matter, what General Lyons said recently to this committee, do you agree that it makes sense, as General Goldfein had said, to bed down KC-46 OCONUS decision tankers, our most limited and stressed resource, in a location that allows them to be responsible to multiple threats and multiple combatant commands?
Senator, I agree that we should base the KC-46 in the places that give us the most flexibility.
How about multiple combatant commands being able to, does that allow the most flexibility?
Senator, that is one of the areas that we look at and to give the most reach, and as you described in our conversation earlier this week.
Okay, I'm going to continue this line of questioning, but I see my time is up. Well, let me just ask one final one related to that.
You're in charge.
I'm in charge. I guess I can do this. Does it make sense, kind of on the flip side, to have OCONUS KC-46s in a location that's focused only on one combatant command and will be vulnerable soon to long-range precision weapons from our adversaries in the Indo-PACOM region?
Senator, it probably does not, because it increases the risk to the fleet.
Thank you. Senator Jones, I believe you're next.
Let me see if I can get this on. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for our witnesses today for your service and your willingness to serve. I very much appreciate this. I am probably going to make a couple of statements. I have a couple of quick questions, so I want to make, I'll issue some questions for the record. For instance, Secretary Anderson, I know that you have had a interest in missile defense. Obviously, that is very important to the state of Alabama at Redstone Arsenal, so I'm likely to follow up with you on a number of topics that way. One of the things I've done on this committee is also pay particular attention to the men and women in uniform, and not just our increase in the nuclear triad or modernizing our military capabilities. General Brown, I will say it is an honor to be part of your confirmation hearing as the first African-American chief of any branch. Being able to provide an example for other minorities, for women, I think is incredibly important. I have had a special interest in support of the Air Force Junior ROTC program to encourage minorities and women, and we've got some language in the NDAA last year to spread that across other branches. And so I look forward to hearing more from you at an appropriate time concerning a concern that I've got about underrepresentation of minorities and women in more senior ranks in the Air Force. I think that is something that I am sure, without you having to verbalize it, you are committed to work on. So thank you for that. Ambassador Braithwaite, we had a great talk a couple days ago. Thank you for that. I very much appreciated that. First thing I'd like to mention, I'm really kind of compelled to state on behalf of my state, I was really disappointed with the Navy's decision on the next generation frigate contract, which I believe the Navy overlooked some really obvious choices, and that is Austal USA down in Mobile, Alabama. They have consistently proven a record of top quality, highly capable ships that came in on budget and on time for the Navy. And we look forward to getting more information. I must say that having spent a couple of years in this city, One can become quite cynical as we approach elections, and it is a concern for mine based on what happened with Huntsville last year when the Space Command decision was reopened after Huntsville was one of the finalists on that we now have that frigate contract going to a state that is clearly a battleground state for the upcoming election. And I'm not making allegations, but as a lawyer, it just raises my sensitivity somewhat when I see that happen and overlooking a company like Austal, who has come in done so well with their contracts. But the other thing I want to mention, and Ambassador, you and I talked about this, and this will be for both you and General Anderson. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a number of shootings at military bases. Fort Hood, 14 dead in 2009. In 2013, there were 12 dead at the Naval Shipyard. Again, a shooting in 2014 at Fort Hood. In Chattanooga in 2015. And last year, in December of 2019, there was a shooting that killed 3 people in Pensacola, including one of my constituents, Caleb Watson, who was killed in a terrorist attack at the Naval Air Station there. Caleb was the officer on deck that morning. He's one of the first people the shooter encountered. And although he was shot 5 times, he managed to make his way out to flag down first responders and give an accurate description of the shooter. Tragically, Caleb died of his wounds in the hospital. I know that Senators Scott and Perdue also lost young men from their home states in that awful incident. I know that the number of killings on military bases does not seem like a lot considering the number of shootings that we've had across the country in the last decade or 20 years or so, and especially with the number of deaths in this pandemic. But for our men and women who volunteer to serve and to put their lives on the line in the service of their country, they should not have to die needlessly. I've met with Caleb's father and brother, and I've made a commitment to work with them to try to get to the bottom of what happened. I think there are a number of instances that could have saved Caleb's life and perhaps others. The GAO issued a report in 2015 concerning recommendations on military bases. And I'm not quite sure that any of that has been followed at this point. We've not seen any follow-up. So my simple question, I would like to get to a little bit more to the bottom of this, but I have just a simple question for both you, Ambassador Braithwaite, and General Anderson. Are you committed to looking at those reports, looking at those recommendations to try to see if there are things we can feasibly do to prevent the needless killing of men and women in service, not only of the military, but also the potential civilians that are on these bases as well? Let's look at that GA report, try to implement those things, and work with our office to try to see what we can do to better protect our men and women. Ambassador Braithwaite.
Absolutely, Senator. As you and I discussed, I was stationed at NAS Pensacola, and that incident came a little closer to me because one of my shipmates in the Navy, his son was training there, as we discussed, and was in that building and literally just left minutes before the shooting. Anybody who goes aboard any military installation has to show an ID card, and it always gives you a sense of security when you do that, whether you come into this building or you come into the Pentagon or any of our military facilities around the world. So I pledge to you, Senator, that I will look into this. I understand that some parts of the report are classified in a follow-up to our discussion the other day. If I am confirmed, I look forward to looking at those reports and ensuring that we have the processes in place to protect the men and women, both in uniform and out, who are aboard those bases.
Great, thank you. General Anderson? I got to get the commitment from you.
You do have my
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I know my time is out, but I would like to recommend to the committee, to the chairman and ranking member, that we possibly conduct a hearing on this at some point to look into the safety of our military men and women and civilians on these bases so that these tragedies don't happen again. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. On behalf of the chairman, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. Ambassador Braithwaite, our nation's first commander-in-chief wisely observed that discipline is the soul of an army. As a former commander, I learned that good order and discipline is the North Star that ensures we always fight with honor. It's how our United States military became the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen. while adhering to the laws of war and rejecting wanton conduct and reckless violence that is harmful to its mission. Good order and discipline is truly the soul of the United States military, and that soul is now threatened by a commander-in-chief who glorifies torture, betrays American allies, and celebrates war criminals and despots. Generals, admirals, successful business executives all have proven incapable of withstanding the erratic demands of a petulant president who normalizes war crimes by offering degrading characterizations of our honorable service members, such as this disgraceful quote from President Trump. And I quote, "We train our boys to be killing machines, then prosecute them when they kill." By their inaction, top leaders have enabled this commander-in-chief who threatens to transform the U.S. Armed Forces into an undisciplined, brutal fighting force devoted to supporting one man, unaccountable to the chain of command, and dismissive of the laws of war and constitutional principles. This is a danger to the professionalism of our great military. It is one thing to take the fight to the enemy and to rain down destruction upon them, but it is dangerous and beneath the professional standards of our military to conduct itself as if it is the personal force of a wannabe despot. There have been glimmers of leadership from within the administration. Former Secretary of the Navy Richard Spencer used one of his last official acts to inform President Trump that, and I quote, "I cannot in good conscience obey an order that I believe violates the sacred oath I took in the presence of my family, my flag, and my faith to support and defend the Constitution of the United States." Secretary Spencer demonstrated leadership in not only sacrificing his position of power in defense of good order and discipline, but equally important, confidently speaking the truth to power to inform the American people of the dangers posed by the current commander-in-chief. Mr. Ambassador, do you believe that our men and women in uniform are just, and I quote, "killing machines"? Do you believe something more is required of them, and that there are good reasons for that requirement?
Senator, I had an opportunity to talk about good order and discipline a little while ago, and like you shared that experience in uniform and understand the importance of it. I believe the men and women who serve in uniform of our nation are patriots, first and foremost. They demonstrate that every day. They go into harm's way, as you and I both did, and we have a sacred commitment to ensure that they have the resources they need, and we ensure we protect their interests.
Do you believe that the law of war is fundamental to good order and discipline?
Excuse me?
Do you believe that the law of war is fundamental to good order and discipline? Going back to our days as cadets when we learn about the law of war and professionalism in the military, do you think that that is fundamental to good order and discipline in our military?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you affirm the importance of respectful treatment of the enemy dead, one of the oldest rules of the law of war?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Do you think that taking a photo with the corpse of an ISIS fighter and then texting the image to friends is respectful treatment of the enemy dead?
No, Senator, I do not.
If confirmed, how will you react to service members who violate the law of war with dishonorable behavior such as that?
Anybody exhibiting dishonorable behavior will be held accountable if I'm confirmed.
How?
To ensuring good order and discipline and the chain of command is followed, and ensuring that we uphold those sacred truths that you've just explained to us.
And use of the UCMJ?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do you believe that public statements made on social media by active duty service members can negatively impact good order and discipline?
I have some very strong feelings about social media. Social media can influence anything at any time. And people need to be mindful of that, no matter what they comment, when they comment. If you look, Senator, I don't participate in a lot on social media for that very reason. And when I served as the Vice Chief of Information in the United States Navy, I advised many senior officers to do the same. There's a means and a medium to be able to communicate through that, but there's also a lot of misuse of it.
Thank you. So recognizing that certain behavior on social media can have very real impacts on good order and discipline, do you think that those service members who violate standards of conduct on social media should be held accountable for their actions?
Yes, I do.
How would you react if, under your watch as SecNav, an active duty service member publicly called the leadership of his or her service and other commanders, and I quote, "a bunch of morons," as Eddie Gallagher did on cable news last year?
If they were still in the uniform of our nation and they were responsible for their actions under the UCMJ, they would be held accountable appropriately. I would hope first and foremost by their direct commanding officers. Again, following good order and discipline on the chain of command that you and I both served under.
Thank you. How can the average American trust that service members will uphold military values if the leaders of the department fail to act when those very values come under attack? We had this discussion, and this is about reinstalling culture and those values within the Navy, and you're ready to do that.
Well, so again, I talked about that earlier. It starts with trust up and down the chain of command. You and I know that you can't just tell a young sailor, soldier, Marine, or airman to go into harm's way unless you have their trust. You gain their trust by the demonstration of being forthright in the way that you communicate to them and ensure that you, again, uphold good order and discipline through the chain of command. If I'm confirmed, will ensure that we build back trust both up and down the chain, that we look to reestablish a strong culture based upon that trust, and that comes with strong leadership and understanding the responsibility and the accountability of what being a leader means.
And are you willing, should it come to it, be willing to resign your position if in your good conscience an order from the president violates a sacred oath you took in presence of your family, your flag, and your faith as you have from 1980 onwards?
Again, I've been asked this question, and I've repeatedly stated that, like you, I raised my hand, I took the oath of office, and committed to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and I will continue to do that. I will continue to follow the lawful orders of all those appointed over me, as both you and I did when we were in uniform at all ranks.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm over time, but I do have a question for Dr. Anderson I'd like to submit for the record. It has to do with INDOPACOM and its importance to the NDS and our nation's security in the future.
Without objection.
Thank you.
We're going to go to round two unless Senator McSally's ready. Are you ready to go? Okay, Senator McSally.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have been watching from my office, social distancing virtually. It's good to see you all. Congratulations on your nominations. General Brown, I want to talk about the A-10 Warthog. I'm sure that's no surprise to you. You may be aware that we put some requirements in previous NDAAs. Specifically, look, we need fifth-generation fighters. I love the F-35. We need our airmen to be able to have air superiority, which we've made it look easy for so long. But you need the Ferrari and the pickup truck. And even in high-end warfare, we need the ability to protect the men and women on the ground with capabilities that are unmatched, like the A-10 Warthog. So it was good to see in your testimony that you did talk about the importance of having that fourth generation and keeping them into the future, including the A-10. We put some requirements because of previous concerns of just getting rid of it altogether, that there needed to be a fly-off competition between the F-35 and the A-10, that there needed to be the full operation test and evaluation report of the F-35, and then another assessment following that, all happening in series before any planning or anything could happen related to retiring one more A-10. Are you aware of the requirements that we've had in the NDAA in the past related to this?
I'm somewhat aware, and I've, in my preparation, I've been made aware of a little more detail.
Okay, great. I was concerned that the proposal for this next year's budget included phasing out some number of the A-10s without any regard to those requirements we had in there, where we clearly said you can't plan to retire one more A-10 until these things have happened, and these things have not happened yet. So we're in ongoing discussions with your leadership, and should you be confirmed, this is something we're going to be engaging with you on. So can you just talk to me about your views on this issue, where the A-10 stands in the future of our Air Force, how long with its upgrades and the new capabilities that it has, how long do you think it'll be in the inventory, how important a niche capability like that is to protect men and women on the ground who are often in very complex and moving firefights where we already have air superiority, but we still need to have the best capabilities overhead to keep them alive?
Well, I do believe the A-10 will be around for a number of years. The challenge I think we'll run into is we're seeing not only with the A-10, but as you saw with the B-1, that in order to maintain that fleet and make it affordable, at some point we're going to have to take some that are probably not as doing as well and move them aside. So one, we can maintain the fleet, but also invest into the future. So we've got to be able to do both, maintain the fourth gen into the next 15, 20 years, at the same time modernized with that fifth gen capability as well.
So is it your perspective the A-10 with its modernization would be around into the 2040s, still operating at some number, which we'll continue to talk about?
I can't say specifically whether it's 2040, but I know it's going to be probably the next 10 to 15 years at least, particularly as you start investing in the replacement of the wings. You're not going to make a big investment if you're not going to keep it. And that's kind of where I think the Air Force is headed.
Great. So look, if previous efforts had their way, all of them would be in the boneyard right now. So we were able to stop that from happening. So I think there's a broad agreement. We need the capability. Now there's a discussion about the capacity. And right now there's 281 in the fleet. There's 9 operational squadrons, 5 active duty, 4 Guard and Reserve. And so we're going to have follow-on conversations about this. What's the right capacity and what's the right mix, active Guard and Reserve, in order to keep this niche capability, not just for combat search and not just for close air support, but also for combat search and rescue, which is an often overlooked mission that the Sandy Fleet runs when we have Americans that need to be rescued that are in enemy territory. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Just know I was concerned about seeing efforts to draw it down before the requirements we put in law were met, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation we'll have should you be confirmed.
Senator, if confirmed, I look forward to the conversation.
Great, thanks. Ambassador, I'd like to ask you about, do you see China taking advantage of COVID-19 in their aggression in the South China Sea and other places? And specifically with the lack of a presence of our carrier, and what is your observation about what China is doing in that region? And are they? I mean, it appears to me they're taking advantage and trying to continue with increased aggressions because of coronavirus. But what is your perspective on that?
So thank you, Senator, and I would agree with you. I think they've tried to flex their muscle and see what they can achieve there. I do know that currently the United States Navy has over 90 ships that are deployed at sea that are COVID-free. I also know that there are contingencies in place to meet requirements for carrier strike group combatant commander needs, including the Roosevelt itself, which is on the other side of the COVID curve. So if anybody underestimates the intent of the United States and its concerns over national security, including the People's Republic of China, I think they will grossly underestimate our capabilities.
Great, thank you. I'm over my time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
On behalf of the chairman, Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me direct the same question to both Ambassador Braithwaite and Dr. Anderson. In your response to the chairman's standard questions, including providing all pertinent information upon a request from the committee, you said unequivocally, yes, you would. Yet in your written pre-hearing questions, there were some qualifications. I want to make very clear that the yes is unequivocal and that you will respond to every committee request dutifully and diligently. Is that accurate, Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, sir, it is.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of the chairman, Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, on behalf of both Senator Sullivan and myself, I want to emphasize the importance of the Arctic as a strategic region. The opening up of the Arctic Ocean is a world historical event. It's the equivalent of the discovery of the Mediterranean Sea. It's an entirely new water body that was unavailable for human use except for the indigenous peoples for all of human history. It's of enormous strategic importance. We've already had testimony about the northern route and trade to Europe. There just are any number of strategic imperatives, and it has not been a serious focus of the United States government for obvious reasons. The Chinese now to have declared themselves a near Arctic nation. That's like Maine saying it's a near Caribbean state, but they've done it nonetheless, and I think it indicates their intention. So not really a question, but I commend to all of you attention must be paid to this very important strategic region. Ambassador, you know from your work in Norway how important it is and how Russia and China are, of course, Russia has the huge border. Russia and China are both expressing great interest.
So you and I, Senator, have had many discussions about this over the years, and I know that you share my concerns for the Arctic, and as you articulate how it emerges and what an important theater it is. The great news is the United States Navy has been up there for many, many years. You may not see them, but they're up there. As it begins
I've been up there with them under, I know why.
Yes, yes, sir. As it begins to become more navigable on the surface, we also need to make sure that our presence is noted. And we have not done that across all USG policy. So I know that in my current role as the U.S. Ambassador to Norway, working under the leadership of Secretary Pompeo, who's put an emphasis on this, as well as reading the U.S. Navy and the CNO's guidance for Arctic presence into the future. It will be a priority of mine, sir.
A comment for Ambassador Braithwaite and General Brown. We've talked to both of you about readiness and how many of our airplanes, how many of our ships are ready at any given moment. I would appreciate it if, for the record, you could supply, and this may take some time to consult with your new staff, a goal, a target, a hard target, 68% or 73% or hopefully 87%, whatever it is. I'm a great believer in the adage that if you don't have a destination, you never get there. And I would look to both of you to give us a specific destination in terms of overall readiness and readiness of a specific platform. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Mr. Anderson, I don't want to leave you out. One of my concerns is that all of our strategic thinking, and this is a commonplace, that we tend to fight the last war, and yet the next war may well be cyber. And I would like to have your thoughts on the importance of preparation, cyber deterrence, resilience, the general question, because this is where a country like Iran or North Korea that doesn't have the military capability could still strike at the heart of our country.
Thank you, Senator. So the department takes the cyber domain very seriously for all the reasons you mentioned. It is a domain of increasing importance that has become where we have been devoting with congressional bipartisan support, additional resources, or cyber mission teams. For example, we have General Nakasone, who's leading Cyber Command, and with assertive leadership, we have issued cyber strategies. And we are defending forward. That's an important new approach. We are no longer on our heels when it comes to malign cyber activity by our competitors and our adversaries. So I would say that with defending forward and persistent engagement with the authorities we now have and the resources, we are on a good trajectory. But we're also not at all complacent. I would also say that your leadership with the Project Solarium has been very helpful on the several levels, helping to make a somewhat esoteric topic more digestible to the public at large. And I also know that Project Solarium, which a couple of people, my colleagues in policy, were able to participate in.
David Norquist and Ken Rapano made invaluable contribution.
Thank you. And I know there are a number of recommendations, so I look forward to, if confirmed, looking at those recommendations and seeing what more needs to be done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to finish up with a few more questions, and then we'll finish up this hearing. General Brown, with regard to the OCONUS basing of the KC-46, I've outlined a lot of what others have said, the Secretary of Defense, General Goldfein, Secretary Wilson, this committee, the Congress. And as you probably know, you may know, there are other senior military members who have made comments both in private meetings and publicly about this. One saying it's a no-brainer where this Oconus decision should be. As you know, this is an important matter for me. So I have one final question for you. If General Billy Mitchell were still alive and he were making the Oconus decision on where to base the KC-46, where do you think he would base the aircraft? And you can just give me a one-word answer.
Was this before or after his court-martial?
No, he was he was reinstated after he got court-martialed, but that was a Senator McCain question.
I'm channeling.
Senator, I think Billy Mitchell would say Alaska.
Okay, he would, and he is the father of the Air Force. Very strategic thinker, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. I do want to switch topics now here with regard to the Arctic, and I appreciate my good friend Senator King, and you already heard others. And I think I've mentioned to all of you, there's certainly been an awakening of the strategic importance of the Arctic. Our adversaries are not waiting, as Ambassador Braithwaite has already mentioned, Russia, obviously, but China, others. The great power competition that we now know is upon us is really taking place in that part of the world. We have strategic interests there. We are an Arctic nation because of my great state. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned to all of you, the Pentagon has really been probably the last agency in town to realize this. And this committee has stepped up in a bipartisan way over the last several years, whether mandating a DOD Arctic strategy, authorizing the building of 6 polar-class icebreakers. We have 2 right now. One is broken, and the Russians have, last count I had, 54, including nuclear and significant capabilities with regard to weaponized icebreakers. So, but it's starting to change, even at the Pentagon. I would say General Brown, certainly Secretary Barrett, General Goldfein are understanding these issues. Secretary Spencer was a real advocate and understood this. So can I get the commitment of each of you to work with this committee on these important strategic Arctic issues, which, again, the Pentagon's been slow to, but we think are important? Can I get a yes from each of you?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Let me just ask a kind of a more specific issue. Ambassador, we talked significantly about the importance of a strategic Arctic port. As you know, the nearest DOD strategic seaport with regard to our interest in the Arctic, in the Bering Strait, where all this increased shipping traffic is happening, is the port of Anchorage. Alaska is a big state. That is 1,500 miles away from the Arctic Circle. We have nothing else that can handle a destroyer, an icebreaker. Secretary Spencer was a vocal advocate for the need of a strategic Arctic port. If confirmed, can I get your commitment to also be a strong advocate for a need for a strategic Arctic port that can handle a destroyer or an icebreaker?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Anderson, how about you? This is an important issue. As you know, it's been a bit of a issue, again, where the Pentagon seems to be the last one to recognize the importance of this. Can I get your commitment, if confirmed, to be a strong advocate within the building? Because the problem is, at the top level, the generals, the secretaries get it, we get it, and yet somehow in the middle of that big building, it stops these initiatives which are important to protect our nation's strategic interests. Can I get your commitment on that issue?
Yes, Senator. As you know, I testified before the committee in March, the subcommittee, and we talked at length about those requirements, and along with General O'Shaughnessy, and he noted there's a fuel requirement up there. So I'm going to take a very hard look at this study that's coming out that we owe you, and I commit to working with you on this issue.
But you owe us, in my view, not a maybe, not a blow-off like the last time the Pentagon looked at this. You owe us a commitment, and I'm expecting that.
You have my commitment.
By the way, General O'Shaughnessy is another strong advocate. Let me just make another. You know, the Department of Defense has numerous what are called regional centers. You're probably aware of these. These are centers for strategic studies. We have one in Germany that studies NATO and our national security interests there. We have one in Hawaii, the Daniel Inouye Age Center, Strategic Study, Regional Center for the DOD in Hawaii that studies the Asia Pacific. We have the William Perry Center that's hemispheric, Latin America, North and South America, that's here in DC. The African Center that is also here. The Near East Center, that's also here. These are DOD regional centers. There's not one for the Arctic. I think to show the Pentagon's commitment, there should be one. I am going to have language with Senator Murkowski and a bill that we have introduced, along with Senator King, to have one. Can I get your commitment to work with this committee, which again has been leading on the Arctic, to finally have a DOD regional center as it relates to the Arctic, which we will be advocating for in this year's NDAA?
Senator, I'm a big fan of regional centers, having worked at the Marshall Center in Garmisch, Germany for 3 years, so I know the value added that they provide. So if confirmed, you have my commitment to working with you on this issue.
Do you believe we need a regional center on the Arctic, given there's a regional center on literally every other part of the world, with the exception of the Arctic?
Senator, I need to kind of review the options in terms of what I know at the Marshall Center, for example, they do have some Arctic coverage. I would have to assess whether that is enough or not enough.
It's not enough.
I think there is a good case to be made for considering an Arctic Center in Alaska.
Well, Dr. Anderson, I want to just emphasize with you, to me, this is going to be a demonstration of whether the Pentagon finally gets it. I've been in this job for 5.5 years. It started with the Obama Arctic strategy, which I held up in a hearing with Ash Carter, Secretary of Defense, and I called it what it was, a joke. It was a joke. It was 13 pages, 6 of which were pictures. Russia was mentioned once in a footnote. It was a joke. And since that time, this committee, have been leading. We need the Pentagon to lead and help us. I will be viewing this, whether the Pentagon supports this regional center or not, as whether you are finally getting serious about this. So can I get your commitment to take a very hard look at this and be on the front foot, not the back foot, the way in which the Pentagon has been on these Arctic issues since I've been here?
Yes, Senator, you have my commitment.
Let me get one final question. Ambassador, as you and I talked about, there's great training up in Alaska. The J Park has airspace larger than Florida, ground maneuver space larger than Delaware, and sea operating space larger than Virginia. Just one training range in my state. The former Commandant General Neller was very interested in about much more aggressive training with the Marine Corps, and I've talked to the CNO about much more air-to-air training and red flag at J Park. Can I get your commitment to take a hard look, and I've talked about this with General Berger, of course, for much more significant presence of the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marines in terms of training, possible UDP deployments up to Alaska to get this outstanding training, and then can deploy on ships to different parts of the Arctic and Asia Pacific?
As you and I discussed last night in great detail, Senator, yes, I will.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. This has been a very informative hearing.
Senator, would you consider putting that Arctic Center in Maine? I'm worried that all the suggestions you've made today, Alaska may sink into the Arctic Ocean.
Well, maybe it should be 2 offices, one in Alaska and one in Maine. We will look hard at both. I do want to echo what so many other senators, Democrats and Republicans stated today, which was you are all very well qualified. This is a very serious panel of distinguished public servants. We appreciate that, and we look forward to your continued service for our nation, and we want to thank you again for your decades of service that you have already provided to the United States of America. This hearing is adjourned.